comparison between, comparative analysis between tropical and extratropical cyclone. So we're going to do a comparative analysis. Next heading, comparative analysis between tropical and temperate cyclones. So first, I'm going to give the criteria on which aspects we're going to compare them. First one is my tropical cyclone. Second is my temperate cyclone. So comparison will save a lot of time. Adanalda illana idhula irukkoda criteria individual cyclones ku pesalam. For example, track, movement, impact of each cyclone can be talked separately. First, origin, the nature of origin. Okay, temperate cyclones, they are thermal in origin. Thermal in origin, that is meaning enna, they are formed due to convecting air currents. Okay, convecting air currents. Yeah. So convecting air currents la form aanada yaru tropical cyclone. Whereas what about temperate cyclone? They are dynamic in origin. Meaning they are formed due to convergence of air masses. They are formed due to convergence of air masses. So warm air, cold air, warm front and cold front. Two air masses converge and they form the cyclones. Second criteria, formation, where they are formed. Second criteria, first we'll talk the factors which I've already discussed in class. Okay, so formation, where they are formed over warm tropical ocean. So only on the ocean surface. Ocean la mattum form avanga. Once land ku vandale and the cyclone enna agum dissipate aidum illaya. So they are formed over warm tropical ocean waters or ocean. What about temperate cyclone? Temperate cyclone, they are formed over both land and water. They are very much extensive. Air masses occupy a larger area. Maritime air mass, polar air mass, and the continental air mass. So convergence engalla nadakudho and edathila ellame enna form agum? Cyclones form agum. So this is my formation. Okay, so the next important is the force, driving force. Which force makes them sustain or which force strengthens them? In case of tropical, this is because of latent heat of condensation. This chart is very relevant. Dayasenji, don't lose this notes. Latent heat of condensation. So ocean surfaces la irukradanaala there is a continuous availability of moisture. Continuous availability of moisture. Thereby the latent heat of condensation will sustain the cyclone formation. In case of temperate cyclone, it is their density difference. Density difference due to thermal contrast. Due to thermal contrast. Okay, warm air and cold air. The convergence of warm and cold air. So the thermal differences induces density differences, and that density, once they balance out one another, the cyclone will dissipate. So this is my third important criteria. Fourth, okay, size of my temperate cyclone, they are relative terms, relatively smaller, meaning they can vary up to the diameter, it can vary up to 80 to or 200 kilometers, 80 to 200 kilometers wide. There are some cases larger cyclone, tropical cyclones up to 300, 400 varaikku irukku, but we are taking the average value 80 to 200 kilometers wider dia. Whereas temperate cyclone, they are relatively larger na endha alavukuna, the average dia falls approximately 1000 to 3200 kilometers, meaning hundreds of tropical cyclone can fit into the area of my temperate cyclone. They are very large. Diameter of my entire cyclone. Now comes the velocity. Velocity வந்து நான் last எழுதுறேன். The next is lifespan or duration. These cyclones ocean la irundhu landfall varaikkum calculate பண்ணோம் அப்படினா not more than 7 days or not more than 1 week. Not more than 1 week. The average value, the average lifespan lies around 5 days. So definitely not more than 1 week. That is the entire duration, formation la irundhu landfall varaikkum. And what about them? This is, they can last up to, the cyclone can last up to 2 to 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks. The next difference. Okay. How they are formed? For example, the presence of frontal system. In terms of frontal system, there is an absence of fronts. There is no concept of frontal generation in case of tropical side. So absence of front, no such concept. No such concept na edha venda, adu nama understand. Okay. What about them? The entire mechanism revolves around frontogenesis. Frontogenesis is the mechanism of formation. Mechanism of formation of temperate cyclone. So various fronts are formed: stationary front, warm front, cold front, and occluded front. Okay. The next one, region of calmness. Region of calmness na inactive wind movement and the Mariana zone irkana? Obviously yes. Eye of the cyclone, I hope you all remember, eye of the cyclone is characterized by calm, clear, cloudless sky. Reason enna? Why eye of the cyclone experiences calm weather, clear and cloudless sky? Calm weather, calm weather, clear and cloudless sky. Because this is where subsidence of cold air happens. Anticyclonic condition, anticyclone solla matanga, cyclone la subsidence of cold air. Okay, this is because of subsidence of cold air. And what about this region? What about the temperate cyclone? Do we have any zone where the wind are static or stable? And the mari zones engana irka? We'll better understand the cyclone now. Okay, there are 4 sectors. Yeah, 4 sectors. Enna warm 4 regions. 4 important components. One is your warm sector, movement of my warm air. Yeah. The next one is cold sector, where intense movement of my cold air. And obviously warm front and cold front, they are also active movement of air happens. So either point or a conclusion and a comprehend that there is no zone of calmness in the temperate cyclone. 4 regions irukku, 4 different components irukku, 4 exhibits what? Exhibits active wind movement or active wind shift. So there is no zone of calmness. So size paathom, then we look into the shape. Not in a specific order, எனக்கு ஞாபகம் இருக்கிற மாதிரி எழுதிறேன், நீங்க அதை வந்து sequentially arrange பண்ணிக்கங்க. The shape of the cyclone is elliptical. Elliptical in shape. இந்த மாதிரி இருக்கும் cyclone. இது எல்லாமே என்ன clouds, வெள்ளை கலர் clouds, வட்டமா ஸ்பைரலா இப்படி சுத்திட்டு இருக்கிற மாதிரியான appearance. And what about them? The shape is, it appears in the form of an inverted V. Inverted V characterized by wind movements. Okay, so inverted V. Now, isobars. Isobars, one important common thing, these are closed isobars. ரெண்டுமே closed isobars, comparative study. But the shape of isobars are different. For example, these are circular. These are circular isobars. And they are very closely spaced. Okay, very closely spaced circular isobars. Meaning the pressure variation happens very intensively. So கண்டிப்பா உள்ள இருக்கிறது low pressure, மேல போக போக எனக்கு pressure கூடிக்கிட்டே இருக்கும். So இத நான் மென்ஷன் பண்றேன். So 800, 700, 600, 650, sorry, 600 க்கு அப்புறம் 550, 400 இந்த மாதிரியான pressure variation. And what about them? They are not circular. They are not concentric circle. There is a zone of warm air. இல்லையா? அப்ப isobars இல்லனா isotherms depend பண்ணி தான் isobars இருக்கும். Even though they are closed isobars, they are not circular. They are elongated or oval shaped or elliptical isobars. And how they are spaced? They are very widely spaced. Widely spaced. Meaning in a widely spaced na, the pressure gradient is very, very gentle. Okay, so the next is my pressure. Pressure, very common. You need to know this is what? This is a low pressure system. Cyclone nale low pressure. Appo temperate cyclone eppadi irukum? Iduvum low pressure system. Obviously, this is also low pressure. Comparison போடும்போது high pressure னு எழுத tempt ஆகும். But ரெண்டு cycloneமே low pressure system. Difference எங்க வருது? Pressure gradientல. Here they experience steep pressure gradient. Steep pressure gradient force. Therefore, meaning, இதோட implicit meaning, they are very violent. Violent, என்ன spelling? V-I-O-L-E-N-T, right? They are violent and strong winds. Yeah, steep pressure gradient force na difference na artham. So pressure gradient பயங்கர intense ஆ இருந்தா என்னோட wind velocity அதிகம். So என்னோட low pressure centersல, especially tropical cyclones experiences steep pressure gradient. Therefore they are very violent, stormy, strong winds. ஆனா இங்க என்ன? They are also low pressure, but they have gentle pressure gradient. Gentle pressure gradient. Compare பண்ணும்போது comparatively. Okay. Pressure gradient along the fronts. Therefore, how they would be? They would be very gentle winds. They are relatively less strong. And gentle winds. Strong use the word relatively less intense. Okay, relatively less intense and gentle winds. So since pressure differences induces what? The velocity of my wind. Yeah. So when we talk about the velocity of my winds, there is a range of velocity. Normally or cyclone on the 120 இருந்து 250 வரைக்கும் km/h move ஆகும். Normal tropical cyclones. Temperate cyclone also has huge differences, but their average velocity lies around 40 to 80 km/h. Excuse me. 40 to 80 km/h. Let me check the value once again. Okay, these are the velocity range. Next, the shape of isobars pathuma. Isobars pathachu, wind velocity. The next one is your landfall. Eppo landfall illna eppo dissipation decay nadakkum. Decay or the decline of cyclone is primarily when the moisture cut off. Yeah. Moisture cut off nadakalam in two aspects in case of cyclone. One is landfall. Sea la irundhu land ku cross aachuna. Illaya? Innone enna? Passing over cold currents. Passing over cold surfaces of ocean. On two aspects, the dissipation or decline nadakalam. Temperate cyclone eppadi? Temperate cyclone, the very true process of frontolysis. That is the gradual decline in the or divergence of air currents. Frontolysis explicita enna define pannom? The divergence of air currents, air masses after attaining thermal equilibrium. Thermal equilibrium or occlusion of warm air. These are the aspects in which the dissipation can happen or decline can happen. Okay. So, இன்னும் ரெண்டு மூணு facts இருக்கு. One is the track movement. how the tropical cyclones move. Track movements in the latitudes, in the latitudinal distribution, 8 degree north south to 30 degree north south. Some textbooks they often give the value 10 degree north south. The doldrums is the absence of cyclone. I hope you all remember. Up 8 to 10, 30 is the normal condition. So this is the trade winds belt, the zone of trade winds. அப்போ அவங்களோட wind direction எப்படி இருக்கும்? Trade winds ஓட common name margin note பண்ணுங்க. Trade winds are also known as tropical easterlies. So east to west தான் என்னோட cyclone movements இருக்கும். So direction is from east to west. But there are certain conditions for my tropical cyclone. Not all depressions would result in formation of tropical cyclone, right? So the direction is generally from east to west, but in most cases it will have a parabolic path. The path of the cyclone is so much unpredictable. Excuse me. It is so much unpredictable because it takes a parabolic path, and after crossing 20 degree north, 20 degree north latitudes ku mele, so beyond 20 degree north, it shifts northward. Shifts northwards. Okay, very unpredictable path followed by your tropical cyclones. But generally, என்ன direction எழுதலாம்? East to west எழுதலாம். GS வரைக்கும் இது okay. East to west because it falls under your trade wind zone. But in normal conditions, the tropical cyclone moves in search of the favorable conditions. அதே மாதிரி next condition எங்க இருக்கும்? அந்த இடத்துக்கு தான் அந்த cyclone move ஆகிக்கிட்டே இருக்கும். So it obviously takes a parabolic path, and after 20 degree north ocean waters, it will move northwards. That is the normal movement. Here, the track movement in the latitudes is that is 30 degree north south to 60 degree north south. to 70 degree kuda eduthikalam at some cases. North south, okay. Influenced by which belt or which zone? The westerlies. Excuse me. Westerly, so generally the direction is from west to east. The direction is from west to east.